Understand. Cool, okay. Oh, hi. We're live with Mum.
Hello, good morning.
I'm David Coe. This is my mum, Eleanor. I'm the author of Thriving at Nature's Pace. It's a new approach to climate change. Recommend it, please do. If people mention about, kind of our world, just say there's a new book, Thriving at Nature's Pace. Mum likes it so far. Anyway, I've been reading this with my mum for a while now, and today we are on the 12th chapter here. It's called Be Like Nature, and we've talked about the proposal for a bit. So these few days we've been talking about what it actually means to be like nature, what it means to thrive at nature's pace. So I'm just going to get on and read on. So be like nature, trust in diversity. Diversity has had all kinds of names and things about it. What it basically is about is actually how many ways do you interact with different people. So if you think about your life, if it's all pretty much all the same, then what happens if you look at nature is always finding new ways to interact. And those new ways to interact actually gives us kind of quite a bit of shiver of excitement and kind of something new and something exciting for us to do. And that's why actually being like nature means we should trust in that diversity of ways you can interact. So the computer game Tetris first came onto the market in 1985. It was invented by Alexei Pajitnov and became an instant hit. People played it addictively. It has since become one of the best-selling computer game franchises. The game is straightforward. Shapes are made up of four connected and equal-sized squares. The shapes range from a 2 by 2 square and a long 4 by 1 rectangle to a number of irregular shapes. They may be a row of 3 with extra squares sticking out at one of the two ends to make an L, or sticking out in the middle like a stud. They may also be a contorted hitch. The shapes are dropped from the top of a container. The players can rotate the shape. A 4 by 1 rectangle can become a long strip or a tall thin column. They do this to slot the shapes into gaps in an attempt to complete rows. Points are scored when all the gaps in a row are filled and the completed row disappears to make room for more play. It's possible to create a game with only 2 by 2 squares. However, every play would be identical. The diversity of shapes make the variations in play possible. But diversity does more than that. When the pieces are falling, there's not always enough time to move them into place. When that happens, if there were only regular shapes, then it may never be possible to complete a row. Diversity gives the players more chances to win. Point guards in basketballs are frequently the shortest players on a team. They can help the team win. The cox in a rowing boat is often the lightest member of a team. This again helps the team to win. It makes sense to have different sized players to take advantage of their individual attributes. But the secret to winning is in how those attributes interact with the game. That's what gives diversity its advantage. It's not because an L-shaped piece in Tetris, a short point guard, or a light coxswain is special. It's because they improve the way interactions can happen to create more chances to win. That is the secret of nature's diversity. One word destroys diversity more than any other, and that word is scale. This is surprisingly because the climate agenda is constantly talking about scaling and capacity. Capacity building generally translates into money, that then makes scaling an investment objective of delivering sufficient returns. Why is this a problem? Using only 2 by 2 squares inside the Tetris game would make it possible for the play to scale. Any player can now be the expert. If the width of the container is made into an even number of squares, every player would be a winner. The games can now be continued forever. The rows would all complete perfectly every time. But this denies the richness that can come from playing the game when the falling pieces have more diverse shapes. The world's climate solutions resemble this. The focus on wind and solar is to create renewable energy farms on large scales. This is not bringing out the diversity that solar and wind can create. So why does this happen? It is because so much money is put into a project that it has to scale to produce sufficient returns. The money ends up driving the need to scale and suppresses diversity. Instead of resolving challenges with local innovations, one innovation is scaled to deploy everywhere. There are, for example, many ways to use solar energy other than the photovoltaic panels. Back in 1873 in Chile, solar energy was used in the desert mining areas to make fresh water. The technology used heat from the sun directly and focused on the glass condensers. Over 20,000 liters of fresh water was made daily in an area of about 70 meters by 70 meters. This technology on a smaller scale can provide households in coastal areas with fresh water. The technology can be managed by children with little or even no school education. Today, the inclination is to start from advanced technology. For example, today scientists and engineers are trained to think instinctively of first converting the sun's light, not heat, into electricity using sophisticated solar panels. The electricity is then used to recreate heat to desalinate water. This is supported by the high investment cost to make solar panels. They need to be used everywhere to make back the returns. However, all this advanced technology is very energy intensive, and using it keeps up the demand for oil and gas and coal. If the world is going to resolve its climate change challenge, it will have to embrace a greater diversity of approaches. There is simply no carbon budget available for communities in less developed countries and regions to become replica versions of New York, Dubai, or Singapore. The carbon budget is the room remaining for greenhouse gas emissions to keep to the Paris Agreement target. It is all down to the energy they use. The UAE, where Dubai is, consumes twice as much energy per capita as the US, where New York is, and the average person in Singapore consumes even more energy per capita than the average person in the UAE. In contrast, each person in Asia consumes only a quarter of the energy consumed by a person in the US, and the average person in Africa consumes a quarter of the energy of that person in Asia consumes. Amplify this by the number of people in Asia and the growth of the population in Africa, and the prospects of being able to maintain any carbon budget can only come from celebrating diversity in how people thrive. Diversity is about respecting the differences that are present and allowing them to be the reasons for making it possible to win the game. Thrive contrasts can help diversity flourish. The greatest strength is that they can facilitate people to make their own choice. That would stimulate people to look at their own situations to see what is special about them. That would bring out the innovations that will specifically help them thrive. This then becomes a lesson. The first lesson to be taught in any discipline should be to warn against treating nature as a canvas to paint over. Nature is already an excellent painting. There is no need to paint it over. Every situation is already replete with opportunities and resources. The second lesson is to look at nature in terms of its diversity. This is difficult. The challenge is in seeing the diversity in the interactions and not just in the things. To understand how it is diversity in interactions that leads to abundance. When everyone pays for the goods and services with the same mechanism, then there is no diversity regardless of the number of goods and services. Today, these payments are increasingly electronic, and this automatically excludes those who cannot pay electronically. If instead a shopkeeper can take payment electronically in cash, check, and even in exchange for a goat, then there is a much broader range of interactions. Those broader interactions reflect the breadth of the community. Shops in rich areas may take electronic payments, but smaller shops often prefer cash, and those who are disenfranchised with the economy are often happy to exchange. The economics is now more diverse, and with more opportunities for emergence and closer to nature's pace. Nature thrives on diversity. Imagine answering something as simple as, how does a plant propagate? Nature's answers are incredibly diverse. There are seeds, but the seeds can be encased in edible fruits. Some seeds can need to be eaten to germinate. The animal having eaten the seeds carry them to new places. Other plants produce long fluffy lids attached to the seeds to allow them to be picked up by the wind and rising air. This, for example, is how cotton is created. Cotton makes use of wind to carry the seed away. Others, like tumbleweed, turns the entire plant into a dispersal seed shaker. The whole plant is shaped into a ball and is detached. As it gets blown around, the motion loosens the seeds. All this variety is to enhance the interaction of the plant with its environment. It saves energy. Diversity makes it possible to imagine not needing to exhaust all the oil and gas and coal there is by thriving at nature's pace. Take, for example, the refrigerator. A significant proportion of development thinking sees having a refrigerator as a sign of progress. However, back in the day, a larder was used to keep raw meat. The meat was covered in lard and hence the name, larder. Drying and fermenting was used to make food last. Gourds sanitized by smoke were used to keep milk from souring, even in hot temperatures. These diverse approaches all come from understanding how food interacts with different environments. Inspiring diversity is a social and technological challenge. Imagine giving 100,000 people $10 each to find ways to keep food fresh. Then there will be 100,000 ideas. If only 1% of those ideas are successful, that's 1,000 successful innovations. Most of these innovations will be appropriate for the environment the people designing them come from, and will have little need for further resources. The electricity not needed to run refrigerators can now be saved as oil and gas and coal that can be kept in the ground. This makes it particularly valuable. If instead the $1 million is given to incubate a handful of ideas, then each would likely want several $100,000. Instead of the thousands of successful innovations, there may be only one successful innovation. The chances that such a single innovation can help people in 100,000 different places without forcing them to lose their unique presence in the world is almost zero. Emergent economics is not better or worse than extractive economics, it is different. Values emerge from diversity. When students learn about resources in mainstream economics, they learn about demand and supply and how changes in demand drives changes in supply. This puts economic thinking into a mechanical picture with gears and handles. Pull this gear and turn that handle, it becomes an exercise in manipulation. It is the orchestra with a conductor waving a wand. Diversity is different. Each musician plays her own tune. This makes the music diverse. However, the diversity is also in the interactions. They listen and interact with each other differently. The music is improvisational. There is no scores to follow, and each musician expresses her uniqueness using her own unique voice that makes the music constantly changing and alive. There is a call here and a response there. But there is a structure because the musicians all keep time. This keeping time is the abundance that emerges from diversity. It propagates to make more variations possible. It comes from all the parts interacting together to make a whole, and this is a whole that is more than the sum of the parts. Aristotle is credited with this phrase, the whole is greater than sum of the parts. What he actually said is the totality is something besides the parts. He used it as a way to understand nature. It was about how all the pieces interacting together create something that is different and has a life of its own that thrives. This is nature. Nature is the totality that has its own voice. It is beyond merely the list of all the animals, plants, and other animate and inanimate things that make it up. Economics emerges in this way too. It makes use of the uniqueness of how every individual interacts with others to thrive at nature's pace. So the final lesson should therefore be to explore how to thrive at nature's pace. That was quite long, Mum.
Yeah, 但只要有 energy，
Yeah.
但冇水點得？
So Mum is saying what happens if you have the energy and you don't have water, which is what they did back in Chile, is they discover a way to allow the energy to bring water.
How can it happen?
Well, there's water in the air, in the moisture, so they can capture that in those times. And that's one way. And in fact, around in Chile, they still do that a lot. So in some places, they hang up materials at night and it gathers moisture and they squeeze that out in the morning. And in other places, they try to dig, but digging can be quite difficult. But animals and plants have great ways to get more moisture. So the other day, I have some strawberry plants. And it was in the morning, and I noticed at the tip of the strawberry plants have leaves that are like this, but they're still all very jaggedy, little sharp points at the end. I realized that it was very early in the morning, there was a drop of water at the tip of every one of the sharp points. And so that would drop onto the soil and keep it moist. So the strawberry plant mixes own water from the air.
Oh, they absorb the moisture during the night.
Yes, so the moisture in the air, when it cools, then the water moisture in the air condenses out. And the leaves being sharp makes it gather into the sharp points, and then that drops off. So it becomes like a little trickle of water irrigation, and it's designed by the leaf themselves in order to do this. So there is all sorts of moisture and things, and of course the other side of it is how much we use, which is where you keep telling us in that way. In somewhere like Kenya, they use about 14 liters of water a day. A person uses like 10 liters of water a day, not 40, about 10 liters of water a day. In London, the average person in London uses over 140 liters a day. So the same person living in different places, doing not necessarily very different things, but it's the difference between whether you always wash your clothes every day and things like that, or whether you actually have a bowl to wash your dishes in, or whether you just allow your tap to keep running, and whether you wash your hands and allow yourself to have a bowl of water to help you, and do those sort of things. So one half part of it is the water, how much we can get. The other part of it is how much we can use. And the more energy we use, the more we don't think about those things anymore. Because the energy can pump the water over from far away, and so we don't think about it. And the energy allows us to help us pour all the water away after we used it, so we don't have to think about it. And so it ends up being a waste all around. It helps us, energy helps us waste things very, very much. So, okay, thank you for everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Bye.
I'm David Coe, Dr. David Coe. This is my book, Thriving at Nature's Pace, The New Approach to Climate Change, reading with my mum, Helena. And all the best, and see you again soon. Bye-bye, have a great day, God bless.
Bye-bye.
So yeah, so the more energy we use, the more we waste.